All right, we are going to start with chapter 1 here. And, I guess I should actually put it on the actual big slideshow thing, so it actually looks a little bit better. But chapter 1, we're going to start out with, obviously this is a police community relations course. So if you don't understand what who the police are and what the police do, then you can't really understand police and their relationship with the community. So many of you have probably already taken a criminology course at some point in your life, and just living in society, you probably have a general idea of who the police are and what their role is in the community. But this is a pretty long chapter. Sorry, I'm warning you now. That kind of gives you a breakdown of the criminal justice system. So I'm going to skim over this chapter in the criminal justice system. Okay? So there are different agencies that are involved in the police. Sometimes there's a sheriff, sometimes there's a police officer, sometimes it's the DEA agent, sometimes it's an FBI agent, but ultimately, we have to figure out why we have police. And how do the police fit in the criminal justice system? And ultimately, what is the goal of the criminal justice system? Why do we even have the criminal justice system? So, underlying all of that is the whole concept of justice. So one of the things that I really like, I like to ask in class, this is a really good class discussion, it could take like the entire class. I would ask the question, what is justice? And ask you to define that. And I could probably ask every single one of you, what is justice? And first and foremost, when you think about trying to define what does that mean, it's kind of hard. If you think about it, like, what does it really mean? What is justice? Justice means many different things to many different people. Think about what justice means to a victim as opposed to a suspect. Think about what justice means to you if let's say your mother or your daughter or your father or your most loved one is murdered. What does justice look like to you? Versus, what does justice look like to you if your kid, your son, your daughter stole a pack of gum from the grocery store? Justice is something that's subjective. It means different things to different people under different circumstances. And I hope that kind of makes sense, because that's kind of one of the difficult things in police community relations, because justice means so many different things to so many different people in so many different times in their life. And I can tell you this as an older person now, I'm in my midlife, let's call it that. When I was younger, I was so pro death penalty. I was like, if these people are killing other people, they deserve to die. No questions asked. And as I get older, that whole idea, even for me, it changed. I'm not saying that I am anti-death penalty or pro-death penalty now, but I can tell you that as I have grown, and as my role as a mother, I don't know, I think maybe I value life a little bit differently now as I've gotten older. So even my own concept of justice has probably changed throughout time. So justice. What the heck is it? And how is it achieved? And these are it's hard because it's really hard to figure out what it means and how can we possibly get to justice for everybody. But I think it is reasonable to say that we need to learn to live at peace with each other. So we have the police to make sure that we can all live in a community without complete chaos. We have to be governed at least to a certain extent. If there were no police on the freeway, if there were no CHP out there on the highway, would you all drive 90 miles an hour or 150 miles an hour everywhere you went? I don't know, maybe, probably. So we have to be governed, and there's got to be an acceptable manner in which we all agree to live in society together. Okay, so we need justice. We need to be held accountable, at least to a certain extent. Okay, but we also need to believe that we're being treated fairly. So citizens have to feel that they're being treated, that it's proper, that justice is proper, that basic human rights are being met, that we're being treated fairly. If you go to prison, are you being beaten there? Are you being starved there? Just because you committed a crime, does that mean that you lose all your basic human rights? And in the United States, of course, the answer to that is no. So again, justice, what does that mean? What does it mean? All right. So you can see that I'm kind of skipping through this stuff, but I kind of want you to get the concept. You can read these slides, and you can, hopefully you have the book and you are reading the chapter. But civil rights, something else that in this country, 100 years ago, civil rights were not considered important. It's and I'm probably naive at this. Clearly, I am a white woman who's grown up in California in post-1960. But when I see things where, blacks and whites were kept separated in schools, it's unthinkable to me. But this is, reality in our country not that long ago. So we need to consider that when we're looking at policing, and police community relations. This was not that long ago. So our basic rights basic civil rights being upheld in police community relations. And clearly this is something that we're going to talk about in this class, because this is a significant issue in the United States and probably throughout the world, certainly in the United States. But again, how is justice defined? It's not easily defined. Perspective has a lot to do with it. We would like to say that justice, fair, moral, and impartial treatment. What does fair mean? What is moral? Are my moral standards different than yours? Are yours different from each other's? Is a criminal's moral standards different than a law-abiding person's moral standards? What's impartial? Right? So all this stuff is kind of vague. So that's why I'm asking you all these questions. So we define justice as a fair and equitable application of the rules of law by agents of social control, regardless of the socioeconomic status of the individuals concerned. That's a really good definition. How easily is justice, as it's defined, applied? Again, I'm asking these kind of hypothetical questions for you to think about. 6 main components in the administration of justice. Compliance with the rule of law. Even that one's tough. Some people steal because they're going to literally in order to survive, because they would starve to death or die otherwise. Not most. I'll give you that. Most people steal because they're greedy or because, they want to support a drug habit or some other issue. But imagine some people really literally are stealing because they could possibly starve to death or they need to feed their families. So compliance with the law, equity, fairness, accessibility, effectiveness, and oversight. So these are all things that should be components of the administration of justice. There are different types of justice: social justice, civil justice, restorative justice, and criminal justice. And again, you have your book, and I hope that you will delve into those a little more deeply. Mission of the criminal justice system: to provide social stability. Rule of law may be defined as government's establishment and imposition of legal process to protect society. Social stability, protect society. In order to accomplish these tasks, they must provide the following: vengeance or retribution, atonement, making things right, and vengeance, kind of eye for an eye, deterrence, to keep people from doing things or prevention, treatment, to fix the problem, incapacitation, to keep someone from doing something, and reparations, to repair harm done. Social stability. This is another really tough one. Maintenance of order and the continuation of equitable social control by the government. This is a tough one. It's a tough one right now. Maintaining order, equitable social control, symbolic reassurance. It's pretty deep topics that we're talking about already at this time in society, in the United States right now, in 2021. There are different types, there are different concepts as far as the whole ideas in the criminal justice system and what we should follow. And we have the crime control model versus the due process model. And ultimately, I'm going to give you kind of my basic description of the two. Crime control model is basically when you're talking about maybe law enforcement and prosecutors lock people up, arrest and lock people up, arrest and lock people up, arrest and lock people up. That's how they control crime. Due process is much more the type of let's make sure that the person who is being accused has their rights protected. Let's make sure that the rights of everyone are protected. So you have crime control versus due process. So for me, when I describe those two, I'm thinking crime control is a prosecutor, due process is a defense attorney. It's kind of a perfect balance, and that's what we should have in the court systems. A crime control person, a prosecutor who's trying to protect the community, and a due process person, a public defender or a defense attorney who is trying to protect the accused. That's the way it should work. And then we have the rights of society. Society needs to be protected. So, oh, this is kind of a blatant, an interesting statement that your book makes. I did not write these PowerPoint presentations, but conservatives want to eliminate burdensome legal technicalities that neither protect the individual rights nor protect society from crime. Crime control perspective, is a reflection of traditional conservative values. So again, crime control model, typically you're talking your more conservatives, whereas the due process, you're talking much more of a liberal kind of, here you go, liberal values. How do we balance those? That's what our system is supposed to do. And sometimes it's very effective and sometimes not. Components of the United States justice system. We all know that the federal government has a significant role in our justice system, and that the Constitution, the United States Constitution, definitely has a significant impact on the laws of our country. The national government does share power, however, with the states. Okay, and we're going to kind of break this down even a little bit more. Again, this is not a constitutional law class. You will probably have to take one of those, and you're going to get much more information about that. But typically, there's different ways that laws are made. You know, the United States Congress makes laws. Some laws are made by way of precedent through the court system. Some are made by way of the state legislatures. Some laws we vote on through the state or federal governments. And then lesser, smaller things we vote on or are made through local ordinances. Law enforcement. Typically, for the most part, if you have a problem and you pick up the phone and call 911, you need a law enforcement official. It's probably going to be a local agency that comes out. Typically. A prosecutor is going to be a person who is, they call it a district attorney, typically. That's typically who you're going to be dealing with if you are in the state of California and you have committed a law violation. You are going to be prosecuted by a local district attorney. If it's a federal law that has been broken, you would have you would probably have a U.S. district attorney that would prosecute the case. Federal laws would include things like bank robbery, only because the banks are all insured by the federal government. If you tried to kill the president or some sort of federal official, that would be a federal crime. You tried to steal mail, federal crime, things like that. Those are things that would be prosecuted by a federal district attorney. As opposed to most your general crimes, even a murder, a murder of a non-federal official. If I went next door and killed my next door neighbor, it would be prosecuted by a district attorney, probably from Fresno County. So there are the two levels, state and federal. Adjudication is just basically another name for the court process. I'm not going to talk at length about this, but there are courts, there are state courts and federal courts, just like we talked about a second ago. I'm going to go back here with prosecution. If I'm prosecuted by a federal, a U.S. district attorney, I'm going to go in federal court. If I'm prosecuted locally by at the state level, I'm going to go to the state courts, which are, there's one here in Fresno. The highest court in the land, U.S. Supreme Court. That would be a really good question for a quiz. There are state Supreme Courts as well. The highest one in the land is the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, corrections. They exist at every level within the U.S. system. There are federal prisons. They typically house, you guessed it, federal prisoners. Okay, I know. I'm just being smarty pants. Okay, and there are prisons in California too. That would be the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, where federal prisoners have violated the law in the state of California are held. Serious, violent felonies only. And then we have the jails. Fresno County Jail, for example, where people are housed pending trial, or other people who have not been sentenced to prison. Okay, so corrections, these are typically people who have been either sentenced or they are awaiting trial. Police. Whew. Lots of different police agencies, okay? There are local police, there are state police, there are federal police, many different levels of police agencies. There are also even colleges and universities, like, for example, State Center Community College has a police agency. That's a state police agency. Fresno State has a police agency. That's also a state agency. Let's see. The city of Fresno obviously has a police agency. That's obviously another state. That's a city local agency. Fresno County Sheriff's Department is a police agency or a sheriff's agency, and they are also a local agency. California Highway Patrol, an example of a state agency. Let's say FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, federal agencies. There's all kinds of different law enforcement agencies, and according to your book, there are 18,760 separate police agencies. Crazy. That's a lot of training to do for a lot of different agencies, which is probably one reason why there are so many issues with law enforcement officials, cops, making some of the bad choices they do, some of the decisions, some of the bad behavior we've seen might have to do with the fact that there are so many agencies and the training is not necessarily all centralized. There are also tribal police. Those are completely separate as well. Okay, federal agencies, there are 100. There's probably, I would be surprised if there were exactly 100, but here are some of them. Homeland Security, FBI, DEA, CIA, you name it. There's a whole bunch of them. ATF, Customs, IRS. So I'm going to go through that. There's some more. ATF, this is what they do. DEA, that's what they do. Of course. Okay, sorry about that. I had to leave. My dogs just went nuts because someone rang my doorbell. Anyways, so DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, this is what they do. I have a good friend in the DEA who just recently was in DC, was stationed there, he just moved back. U.S. Marshal Service, my dad was in the U.S. Marshal Service for quite some time. This is some of the stuff that they do. We have a Fresno office. If you're interested, FBI, this is what they do. Homeland Security. You'll note the date when Homeland Security was created. Just the year after 9/11. 9/11 happened in 2001. Customs and Border Protection. Federal agency. ICE. Federal agency. TSA. Federal agency. Coast Guard. They've been around for a long time. Secret Service. Really interesting. I had a Secret Service agent do a presentation for a class one time. They do so much more than I thought they did. Very interesting. Federal agency. And they had a uniform division as well. State police agencies. Every state has state police except Hawaii. I don't know why, but it's interesting. They protect the governor. I happened to see Governor Newsom at a restaurant in Fresno. I want to say, well, before all the restaurants shut down. So it must have been about a year and a half ago. And there were CHP all over. Yeah, that was his, those were his Secret Service. They weren't really Secret Service, they were CHP. But they were his bodyguards. It was interesting. County law enforcement. Typically, the county law enforcement are going to be your sheriff's departments. They're going to cover county agencies. Typically, non-city areas are going to be run by the sheriff's department. And that is the case here in Fresno, too. Fresno County Sheriff's Department runs basically all the non-city areas. So they cover most of those. And it's interesting, there's some areas inside the city of Fresno that are called county islands. Some places over there in the middle of the Fig Garden area are county islands. So the Sheriff's Department, for some reason, has to respond to all crimes in those areas, which is kind of strange. But anyways, and then you have your municipal police, and they basically cover the cities. So like Fresno PD covers the city of Fresno. So, where do the police fit in the justice system? Depends on who's making that decision. Are they held to a higher moral standard? I believe they are. Should they be? I personally believe they should. What do you guys think? I think that's it. No. No, I'm sorry. Let me back up. Yeah. How do people view police? There's a lot of things that will impact the way you view police. First and foremost is going to be the way your family, friends, people that you are around view them. For me, as a young person, my dad was a police officer. So do you think I thought police were good or bad? it was my dad. So of course I thought they were good. At the same time, my dad and his friends all came to my house, and they would party and do police officer stuff at my house. So I kind of saw a little bit more than probably the average person saw. At the same time, a lot of people do think they're heroes. Other people have watched police come in when they were children and arrest their parents. Other people have had their parents call police officers pigs from the day they were born. Do you think those people are ever going to respect police officers? No. Other people, some of you, guaranteed have had horrible experiences with police officers. And will you ever respect them? Treat them like heroes? Think of them as heroes? Probably not. And would you have good reason to believe that way? Probably. Have I seen police officers be not so respectful to people? Absolutely. So is it understandable? Of course. And young people today are turning on the TV and watching videos of police officers doing horrible things. Unfortunately, the media doesn't make any money off of posting all the videos of police officers doing good things. And quite honestly, police officers are supposed to do good things, right? So those aren't the things that are focused on. So, the police have a lot of work to do to get past the bad things, the really bad things that some police officers have done. So, the whole class, here we go. I've laid it all out. This is what we're going to talk about. This is what we're going to talk about, the whole class. This is it. How are police going to dig themselves out of the mess? How can they build these relationships back up? I don't know. Let's see if we can figure some out.